Hello. Today we're going to be working on a Panasonic SVHS machine called the AG4700, and it's virtually identical to a consumer model, the NVHS1000. And there are other machines that use essentially the same K-mechanism deck inside. Now this machine is actually two that have been put together with two separate faults, and I'm also going to cover some of the other kind of problems that can happen with these machines. So let me show you what we have here. Here is the machine we're going to be working on. It's the AG4700. This is a scrap machine, so this is parts only, and the case looks like it's come from an HS1000 because that's black, but otherwise they're essentially the same machine, and this is complete garbage. It's good for nothing but spares, but that could come in useful. There are two faults with this machine as far as I'm aware. Firstly, it's mechanically struggling. It keeps on stopping when you switch from one mode to another, and leaving tape loops and jamming and that sort of thing. And secondly, it has intermittent colour on playback. Now that's because actually this is two machines. What's happened was I had a machine which had intermittent colour and another machine which had a deck fault, so I swapped the good deck into the good electronics and got that one running. So this is what was left. So I've got two faults to fix, but also I want to mention a very common problem with a motor coupling on these, and anybody who's worked on these knows exactly what I'm talking about already, and I'll show you how you can solve that problem if you finish up with a tape stuck in the machine. So first let's look at the mechanics. Okay, let's try this machine and see what we get. It's been a while since I've tried this machine. That sound then was the head cleaner. I've found sometimes these have a head cleaner installed and sometimes they don't. And it may just be that some people like to remove them, but I think the whole mechanism was missing on one I saw. So they do or don't have head cleaners at random. Press play. Oh, that's playing. Tape's a bit grubby, but it's playing. I'm seeing a little bit of tiny bit of shimmer. I don't know if you can see that. Is the TPC off? Ah, look, TPC off. Oh yeah, that tightens it up. Good. We actually do have good colour as well. Oh, this is going quite well actually. Let's try forward picture search. A little bit noisy, but yes, okay. Back to play. Reverse picture search. Head clog? But this tape is well past its best. Yeah, I think we just went for a bit of a head clog then. Give it a few moments, it'll probably clean itself up. Mechanically that was working okay. Let's try fast forward. Oh, that's not fast forwarding. And now it's in a mood, unlaced. This is kind of its emergency condition, I think, for fast forward. It'll lace up again and go into forward picture search without the picture. So that's not full speed fast forward. It's kind of I'm in an emergency state. I'm pretty sure I can do picture search type of fast forward. If I stop and now do fast forward, it might try again. It's trying again and it's going to fail again. So there's something wrong there with the fast forward. I'll try rewind. Okay, stop. Let's try rewind. That seems to be working fine. And back to play. It's probably still got clogged heads, but oh no, they've cleaned up nicely. And we'll do eject. So fast forward is troublesome, and the colour's working now, but I had a colour problem earlier, so let's check that again later. Now, I want to show you a problem we can have with these and how to get around it. Now let me tell you about a common problem with these and why it can be infuriating to fix. There's a small motor underneath, which I will show you later. It's a loading motor, and it drives most of the mechanism. And the coupling on that motor can split, as a result of which drive becomes intermittent or weak. So typical symptoms are you put a tape in, it goes down, and it whirs and won't lace up fully. Or if you give these guides a push, then it will lace up and work. But when you come to eject it, it gets stuck on the way out. So the way you can hear that is that you can hear the motor spinning. So you put it in, you can hear the loading motor, but it's not finishing the loading cycle. Now, the reason I'm telling you all this right now is because of where the screws are that you would use to release the deck so that you can work on it. They are, I'll switch this off, placed at the front here. One is here, so when we have to pop the front off in a moment, that's quite easy to get to. But the other one is under there, and the problem is that we can manually now. There's no tape in here. We can slide this mechanism out the way. A little bit of jiggery pokery. And we can get a screwdriver in there to undo that screw there to release the deck. And the other one was back here. That's fine. But remember what I said. If you get a situation where that loading motor is spinning, but it is not lacing up, or is not unlacing and allowing you to eject, you've got no chance of getting to that screw in there. And you'd say to yourself, oh, how am I ever going to get this machine apart? It's jammed up, I can't get it to unlace, unless I can maybe push it along and fiddle and mess about with it. Sometimes even then it simply won't work. You won't get enough power from that drive if it's split. You can't get the deck out to fix it. Well, there's a solution to that. Let me show you. Okay, so if you undo the bottom, you've got access here to the loading motor. So you can drive that by hand, just with a screwdriver. It could take you a long time, but you can turn it so that you can unlace the motor. Which way you turn it, can't remember. You can have that fun later. You can also, I think, gain access to the supply voltage for this. So there's a way of putting a low voltage on there and driving the motor. But the short and the long of it is that that's the way you get the deck out if it's stuck. Right, but in my particular case, I'm going to be taking the deck out anyway because I need to work in a bit more detail on the fast forward issue. So for what I'm about to do, I didn't need to take the bottom off. I've done it just to show you what we're up to. We need to take the front off. We need to eject that tape. So I'll eject the tape first. Power it down. Okay, so the front is off. These connectors here go into these sockets. Hopefully you can see them. These connectors fit these sockets, so when you connect it in, it all just sort of works. I've got one over there where this has been snapped off. Somebody's obviously trodden on it and snapped one of these hinges off, which is a major pain to fix. Now I'll tell you now, and I'll mention it again later, there's something very important you do when you refit this. You do not just stick it back on. It won't work. You must, when you attach this, hold the door open when you refit it. Otherwise this door will be on the wrong side of its activation lever there, and it won't allow you to insert a tape. And crazily, they actually use the metal base of this as a heatsink for this transistor, so we have to unplug the transistor at the back. Strange arrangement. Then you can get that out and carefully unplug that one. We have the deck completely removed. Okay, before we get too involved in the actual fault I have with this machine, I want to show you about this loading motor. So it's here, and I might move you to the top camera location now so you can get a better view of that. So here's the loading motor, which is troublesome. In order to gain access to the coupling, which is inside that worm drive, we need to pull it out. So we'll remove this PCB. Okay, that came off fairly easily. Be careful, because that includes things like switches and opto sensor there. Now we're looking at the loading motor here, so we need to spring it out, and there's one screw to undo, I think, just the one. Now the lucky thing is that there's no timing consideration here, so there's no particular orientation for this motor relative to the cam gear there. Right, we need to release this mechanism, and it's a bit fiddly because it's clamped kind of here. Also be aware there's a part of a switch there, so you need to be a little careful. And there are spring clips on the other side which you have to squeeze shut. So there's is it one or two? I forget. There's certainly one which I'll try to point out to you there. I'll try to get that in the camera shot. So you need to squeeze these plastic clips together there in order to be able to push the motor out the other side. Right, so I've squeezed those clasps together to start to release this. Right, now here we need to slide the plastic housing away from this post, and we've finally got the whole of the assembly off. Now we need to remove the motor from the assembly. So there's a plastic tooth there to push, and some of the sides, and you also have to try to release the worm drive itself. So it's a little fiddly, and this one, these two at the front. So there's kind of lots of things to release at once. When you've managed to release them all, you're left with this rather greasy worm drive, and inside there is the coupling that splits. Now this one I've not had a problem with, but I'd be surprised if it doesn't have a split. Let me have a look. I'll look at that with a microscope. Well, amazingly, that one is actually intact, but in most cases that's split. So what you'll need is another one, or try to repair it. So of course, here's what you need. If it's broken, you need to get hold of a replacement spare. They're not going to be very easy to get now. I'm just lucky I have a handful. No, I'm not selling them. But I might change this one as a preemptive strike. Just slide it off the shaft. Now, apparently Panasonic actually had a special tool just for refitting these. And I think the idea was that it helps set the depth up, how far it goes onto the spindle. But, I mean, really, that's unnecessary. Just slide it on carefully. The original one's covered in a certain amount of grease. I don't know why it should be so greasy, but you could put some grease on there if you wish. I want to keep this used one since it's in good working order for the day that I do eventually run out. You may have noticed I have a Hillman Avenger car, and there's a Haynes manual, and it says at this point, assembly is a reverse operation. We can now very carefully refit this back onto the deck. I would locate this first. Different K mechanisms have a different switch arrangement here. Some have a short switch pusher, some have a longer one, so just be careful for that one. I think it's the cassette in switch. We'll try to locate these plastic squeezy things through the hole so you don't break them off. That's perfect. Now, ordinarily, if that's the fault you're fixing, you would reinstall this and assemble the whole machine. But I have a separate problem. My fast forward's very poor. And I'm going to take a guess here that the problem is the wheel drive clutch. What goes on here is this swings the gear from one side to the other, as you can see, depending which way the capstan motor rotates. And I think what goes on, it seems to be working fine now, doesn't it? But I think what goes on is this develops insufficient braking within here to successfully swing the arm quickly enough. But it certainly looks like it's working, doesn't it? Well, both sides seem to be working fine. Is my theory correct? Is it a friction problem within here? Well, let's have a look in here. So there's a split washer type circlipy thing. What's the proper name for these? Okay, I've managed to release that. Now take off the top part of the clutch. I think I can take the top part off. No, the whole clutch. Take the whole clutch off. Okay. In an ideal world, of course, you would replace this, but you'll never get any spares for these. I don't know if this is the problem, but I do know that that way spins quite freely and that one is more resistant. Now, that being the case, the resistant one is rotating that way, which is rewind, and the not resistant one is that way, which is our troublesome fast forward. So I am kind of blaming this, but still you'd have thought it has enough resistance. Now, I don't have any good spares of these. My scrap machine, I know, has a defective deck. I think it's got the same problem. It's got handling problems. Okay, I've sprung that off, and in here there's this felt washer which gives us the resistance we need. So this felt, I think, gets a bit worn down. You can kind of see the lines in it where it meets the lines on the inside of here. And I have had an occasion before where I've roughened this surface up a little bit, and it's given it a bit more friction, and it's worked. So we'll give that a whirl in a moment. There's actually a second clutch surface on the bottom component. Let's just briefly again look at how this works. This item here contains these smooth ridges which press against this felt, and it has clips here which grab hold of the back of it. Which bit? They grab hold of this, I think, and the spring that pushes it against the felt is actually contained here. And if you can see me squeeze it. So you could argue you could increase the tension on that spring, but I don't think that's the way to go. You could potentially score this to give it more bite on here, but I think it might tend to wear this out more, so I'm not sure if that's a good idea. So what could we do to give the felt a little bit more bite? Maybe just roughen it up. I think maybe we'll roughen up both this and this a little with glass paper. Not too much though. My concern is that we're barking up the wrong tree, and there's another reason that it's not selecting fast forward properly. So I'll have to check for other possible causes for this not engaging fast forward. But let's do this experiment first. And we'll very slightly roughen this up a little bit. Interestingly, it does seem to have the same amount of tension in both directions now, whereas before it had a different amount in one direction to the other. So that might be useful. That might be a step forward. Okay, I'm happy with that being a bit better, but I still have this nagging doubt that that's not the cause of the problem. So I'm going to have a look at the service manual and see what it says about how fast forward is selected on this mechanism. Well, the service manual didn't shed a great deal more light on how fast forward is supposed to operate, so I think I'll test it as is. However, small preemptive strike, I'm not seeing any difficulties with the mode switch, but I think I'll give it a little switch cleaner to be on the safe side. Now, of course, you could take it down, take it apart, strip it down, put it back, make sure it's realigned properly. But in this case, I'm just going to give it a preemptive squirt of switch cleaner. Let's reassemble it and see where we are. Okay. The deck is just sat there at the moment, but I believe I have plugged everything back in, including this transistor that uses the deck as a heatsink, and the erase head. I think we have it all there, including also the slightly difficult one that's underneath. Right, let's give it a whirl. You could have used it by remote control, because the remote control sensor works without the front panel being in, but I will refit the front panel. And remember what I said earlier, when you fit this, you need to open this before you fit it. Check that the slide switches all work properly, because of course if these get out of synchronization with the switches behind them, then you'll finish up with the situation they don't work. So everything appears to be good. Select play. Play is working. Rewind. Oh yeah, okay. We'll go faster in a moment. It will go faster in a moment. Right, fast forward. This is where we fell over last time. No, that's not right. Fast forward is still not happy. Now it's in a kind of a Q version of fast forward. It's not proper fast forward. Try one more time. Fast forward. No, it's sort of moving a bit, but it's not right. No, fast forward is definitely not happy. Just reject. Well, that was disappointing. Well, not knowing what else to do, I'm going to take the mode switch apart and clean it, because they are known to be troublesome on many decks, and this one is certainly no exception. So I've never taken this type of mode switch apart before. Let's see how hard it is. I'm looking for the alignment marks, and though there's a arrow here, there is an arrow there. It's not lining up with anything meaningful, which I'm surprised at. I'd have thought there'd be a mark of some sort. I'm going to put a small mark in there. It'll probably become obvious later, but anyway, I'll put a mark in there. That arrow is against that in its present deck position. Let's take this screw out and see if the whole switch comes off. Does it come apart? I've got a feeling this is designed not to come apart. It looks like they've melted the plastic over the top of this when they've assembled it. At last. I'm taking this off. Now let's see what state the switch is in underneath. Well, it's not terrible. So I don't think that is the cause of our problems. But since it's apart now, we will clean it. There's a product called Deoxit, which is available in America, which is good for this sort of thing. But it's not generally available in this country. The other thing is these contacts here, where they mate with the board, they're not great. I'm not sure which exactly is the contact set as it here. They really are quite poor. They need cleaning. Right, and of course we need to look at the contacts here, make sure they're clean, and I will respring them just a tiny little bit. Good. Next I need to heat this back into position, and that will be as good as it's going to be. Okay, I've reassembled that, and I've pushed this on with a warm but not full temperature soldering iron. So let's go back to my own alignment mark that I'd put in and refit it. Then reassemble the whole deck and see if it works. My alignment mark looks spot on, and of course, since there's only so many different places the tooth could be in, it would be way off if it wasn't correct. So I'm happy that that's correctly done. Let's reassemble the whole machine and give it a whirl. So at the moment I appear to be a bit stuck, don't I? We still have this problem that's not fast forwarding properly. The only other thing I found is that reverse picture search isn't very good either. Let me just show you that. Go into play and then reverse picture search. Watch here, the tape here. Here's reverse picture search. Making ugly noise, and can you also see this tape slack building up there? This tape is not being taken up as cleanly as it should be. So there's a problem with reverse picture search. And it's not like it's dragging excessively on the head, because the tape slack is occurring on this side too. So the take-up spool, well, supply spool, is not taking up the tape as quickly as it should. Forward picture search, I think, is okay. Yes. Let's go for fast forward one more time, and we'll see it, I think, go into the emergency shutdown. There we are. It's not fast forwarding fast enough. It gives up, doesn't unlace, relace. And then goes into a slow version of fast forward, where it stays laced up. Okay. There's the clutch. I'm going to take it off and swap it with the one from the other machine, which may be no better, but at least maybe help me to diagnose where our problems lie. Okay, I've installed the clutch from the other machine. It may or may not be different, but let's see how it goes. And I'm also using remote control so I can avoid sticking the front back on, which just makes life harder. So let's see what happens. Play. I want to go for reverse search. Slack's still there, isn't it? Look at that. Oh dear. So I'm sure fast forward will be exactly the same. Here goes. Yeah. Would you say it's even worse? It's developing slack over here now. It can't keep up with the pinch roller. I'd say that's even worse. Does that mean at least I'm in the right place? Oh, look at that. It's left slack on the eject. That's not good. Yes, it's even worse with the clutch, isn't it? So that would appear to be it. I can't get hold of a replacement clutch mechanism. My attempts to bodge this one haven't worked. Well, just so happens I've just been sent a box of goodies. And I don't know if what we need is in here, but I believe there's a lot of goodies related to the K mechanism in here. So let's have a rummage. What do we have? All kinds of interesting stuff. Not just to the K mechanism, but video recorder spares in general. Wow. Packets and packets and packets of goodies. My guess is this looks like it's all to do with front carriages, so that's probably not relevant to what I'm doing here. Let's see what's in here. Lots of rear idlers, always very useful. So these are for, I don't know which model, but oh, there's all kinds of goodies here. I wish I knew what they're all for. I can go through the part codes. Lots of stuff from CHS, Charles Hyde and Sons, who are a supplier of spare parts. Sharp. I think I'll tip them into the box and see what we have. JVC, which of course will be JVC and Ferguson. Belts are always a very welcome thing. Cam gears. Do you remember when video recorders had light bulbs? VHS ones, of course. Beta had a better auto-stop system. Aerial sockets, sometimes they'd get broken. Every time I need a gear of any description, I'm going to have to rummage through here and see if I have something useful. Look, a loading gear? Loading ring. I wonder what format that's for. That might be for Beta machine. JVC. VT8300. I think that's a fairly old model, that one. That's a clutch. Different model to what we're looking for, but it does the same sort of job. I'm not sure what that's for, but it's certainly going to be quite an old machine. Solenoid. So again, that's going to be for an older machine, that. Many interesting gears. Let's see what's in here. I don't think there's any rhyme or reason to which item is in which bag. Oh look, GC. So that'd be from GC McMichael. It's I don't know what. Some sort of loading belt gear. Pulley, it says. Hitachi. Right. So, I know GC was GC McMichael at one point. Did they have a connection to Hitachi? Reason GC particularly relevant to me because I used to work for GC many years ago in a former life. Oh, now we're going back. Look at this. That's a tube base for a CRT. That would be the housing for a capstan, I think. Bit of broken circuit board. Opto interrupter. Actually, I think that might be empty, so it'll be rolling around in here somewhere. Some drive belts. Connectors, I think. Aerial unit for a video recorder or TV, don't know. Oh, big IC. What was that for? JVC. power switch, probably for TV, some white LEDs. Opto sensors. Koenig. They used to do very good video heads. Drive belt. I'll put all the drive belts in a separate place later. Mode selector switch. Slide switch. I think there's a few of those. Well, we lost some of that recording because my camera card filled up, but it gives me the opportunity to set you up a little bit better so we can have a better look at what's going on in here. So, unfortunately, I've opened one of the bags and everything's everywhere. But let's take some time and have a look at what we have in this monster box. Yeah, there's so many goodies in here. But I'm fairly sure what we don't have is Panasonic K mechanism parts. But come on, let's have a look. And something in here is giving me an idea as well. So, what do we have? Ooh. Yes, a very special pot for something. And there's opto sensors, connector, and that's infrared, isn't it? Infrared LED. Same again. Oh, look. Is that a infrared receiver? Remote control receiver? It might be. If it is, that could be useful to hook up to my scope. You may have seen me in a video just a few weeks ago working on some remote controls, and I was trying to look at the patterns coming from the remote controls, and I was using a little device like this, which is fine, but it didn't cope with very long bit patterns. So if I hooked up something like that to my digital scope, it's possible I could look at the patterns in a bit more detail. So I'm going to keep that by. I'll put that next to my oscilloscope, and we'll have to play with that one later. Not sure what that is. And this is obviously from an old machine, just by the sheer weight and size of it. What else do we have? Broken board. Lots of real idlers. Idlers of various types anyway. And you know, even if I never come across a machine that takes a particular idler like this, I mean this might be a Sharp or something, the idler tyre could come in very useful for something. So there's a really nice collection of parts. There's another one with a smaller idler tyre. More idlers with tyres. So these are really very useful. For old-fashioned real idlers. See, all these different idler tyre sizes. Okay, that's from Hitachi. You know, I'm not likely to repair an Hitachi VHS machine, but it's entirely possible that I will need an idler tyre of some size or other. So these are really welcome. What's that? VT9300 Hitachi. Do you know, I'm sure there was a VT9300 that was a Sanyo, or was that VTC 9300 was a Sanyo Beta? So, yeah, just another very useful idler tyre. So many wonderful idler tyres in really good condition. That part seems to have escaped. It was a photo interrupter. Yes, look, there we are. There's a photo interrupter. So there's a, not sure which side is which. There's a sender and receiver. Oh, the FV11s, the Ferguson FV11. I remember when the first time I saw one of them, I thought, wow, that's a fantastic looking machine. It was all black from what I remember. It was a big improvement on the older machines. Another idler tire, I don't know which one. Now this was something that made me think. This is a supply or take-up spool. And it made me think that sometimes I think there's a clutch built into this table. And you know, the problem I'm having with the Panasonic could be the take-up spool, if that's got a clutch in it. So I'm going to check that, because I can't remember. Yes, there we are. There is a clutch in this. So exactly how that works, I don't know, but it looks like this was driven from something and that was maybe driven from something else. But there is a system where there's a clutch in there, which is necessary, of course, because the speed that this rotates at is going to be driven at a certain speed, and it has to slip because the tape itself won't always need that much rotational speed depending where it is in the cassette. Now, a few models of machines have got individual reel motors, one for each spool. Not many, because it was expensive and heavy, but some machines that come to mind are Philips V2000 models. The early Philips V2000 models had one motor per spool. Sony SL-F1, SLC9, they had one motor per spool, and a lot of big Sony Betacam decks have one motor per spool. Again, is there a clutch in this one? Not sure that one does. So the clutch must be dealt with elsewhere, such as in the idler that drives it. I seem to recognise this. I think I probably fitted lots of these in the day. Ferguson, I'm pretty sure that is. There's a big clutch unit. Not sure which model it's for. You could look it up. Opto sensors. Many more idlers. Oh look, VT35 original. So many lovely idlers. That's an idler tyre, I think. Did I show you this before the camera went off? I don't know. That's a tube base socket. So on something like a 14-inch portable, probably something like that. That would have been the socket that plugged into the base of the tube. It's a useful part. It's got a pinch roller on it. And pinch rollers sometimes can go between one machine and another. So that was originally from a Hitachi VT410, but it's quite possible that could prove useful on something completely different, such as a Beta machine. So we've had a good old rummage there. There's lots and lots of these idlers. They're really nice. Some of these parts possibly less useful to me because I'm not likely to ever find a machine that needs that, let alone have to replace it. Do you know what that is? I thought for a moment that might be a Hall effect sensor, but it only seems to have 3 pins, not 4, which most Hall effect sensors do, I think. I'm always on the lookout for Hall effect sensors for Sony Betas because they fail in those. Oh, another tube base. More lovely idlers. This just takes you back to all the idlers that old video recorders used to use. Nice big drive belt. I'll put that away in my drive belt collection soon. Look at that cam gear. Is that a new one or not? That may have been used. Here's another pulley. Obviously from an old machine, VT8300. And another tube base. Wow. What is that? Pole base. Pole base assembly. I've just got to see what that is. What could it be? Oh, of course. So what's going on here is... I've never heard it called a pole base before, but that'll sit in the track of a VHS machine, and it'll go round the head like that, and I think this is probably the one for the take-up side of the head, the exit side rather. So the tape goes through this guide. This is an adjustable guide. You can put a special tool in the top there, or just a flat blade screwdriver, and adjust the height of it, and that sets the alignment as it goes past the head. And then this is a fixed guide, and it goes onto the rest of the machine. And you know what, I might show you, since we've got it here, why don't I show you the special tool that adjusts that, because I think I have one. Would that be this tool? No, that's much too big, isn't it? This one? Thought that was one for 8mm, but maybe. Oh yes, that's it, I think. Doesn't fit in there very well. Maybe these are too thick for this particular guide. That could be rather hard to adjust then, couldn't it? None of those tools fit it. No, don't know what that's for. So that would be a rather hard one to adjust. These are rather nice. Look, these VCR alignment tools. They turn up on eBay sometimes, in one guise or another, and they may have very slightly different parts, and these are slightly different toolkits. So you have lots of useful tools here. So they're the head guide adjustments we were just talking about. This is a head puller. Some machines needed a head puller to take the heads off. And we have some of these will be used for setting the back tension. So there's a little slot next to the back tension adjustment, and you can put that right next to the back tension adjustment plastic piece which holds the band on the back tension arm, and you can adjust that very slightly to set your back tension. Don't be tempted to pay too much if you're into mucking about the video recorders. You should be able to pick these up on eBay, you know, pretty cheap. If you're heading over sort of £20, you're paying too much for them. Oh look, VXP. This is a part for a Panasonic, I think, just judging by the part number, VXP. I think that's a Panasonic part. And this is supplied by Koenig. They used to do a lot of really great parts, including video heads. And in fact, the wound flutter tape I use on one of my previous videos is made by Koenig, but I don't think it's actually particularly good. But never mind. Phillips parts. Oh, yes. Oh, would that be for the Charlie deck? Because that's one where the pinch roller comes down. Actually, a lot of decks, later decks, they do. The pinch roller goes up high and comes down, but I think that's for Charlie deck. The Charlie deck strikes fear into the heart of anybody who ever worked in this business. They were a right pain in the... They used to break up, and there was a refurb kit that involved lots of very precision timing to fit all the parts back into together. There was a fantastic article in Television magazine that told you how to reassemble a Charlie deck, and I did that and did fix one. Which, this was when I was young. I found a Charlie deck mechanism VHS machine on the dump, and I spirited it away. And it was hi-fi stereo, which was quite something, you see, in those days. So I was very pleased with myself. So I just had to get a refurb kit, and I refurbed it, and I used that for many, many years, and I even sold it working years later. So still rummaging in this wonderful bag of goodies. But let's have a quick look here. I think these are the larger parts in this bag. So we've got something to do with a front carriage there. This is... Oh, that's a cosmetic panel for something. Hitachi VT65 control flat panel. Look at that, brand spanking new. Most of those machines have gone to the dump many years ago. What's this? Clutch base. So that's a large clutch assembly for Hitachi something or other. Plate assembly for Ferguson. It's quite well stuck in now. I think I'll leave it alone. And VT64 door timer. So again, another cosmetic panel. I guess they fall off. And then lots of VHS front door loader things. Of course, what always happens on these is these plastic pieces fall off. And it's not impossible that these could still be useful for a Super VHS machine that uses the same deck as whichever of these there were four. So they're all VHS HQ. Though that implies that that particular one's extremely old, because it just says VHS, it doesn't say VHS HQ. So that could be for a fairly old machine. You'd have to be going back to the 80s or 90s or something to not have HQ. And cassette carriage side. Not sure which side or for which machine. And another cassette carriage side. Might be the other side of this. JVC. Yes, it looks like it is somewhat related to this, although it's a different plastic colour. Wow, I had great fun rummaging a big box of assorted spares. However, my immediate problem is trying to fix the Panasonic K deck, and much as these are very welcome and will certainly be used for various machines in the future, doesn't get me any further forward on my Panasonic K mechanism problem. This, however, might help. It's a NV HS950. Actually, I wanted to show you something about this model as well, because there's a particular fault on these that can happen. So this is a scrapper, just by some hope. Maybe the idler is good. So we'll have a look at that in a moment. Let's move you back so you can see what we're doing. So I've just borrowed the clutch from the HS950, and I want to talk to you a little bit more about the 950 in a moment. But let's just see if the clutch helps this machine. Okay, let's see if by some miracle it's any better. Put into play. That's okay. Forward picture search. Reverse picture search. all good. Fast forward. Oh, good. Oh. I thought we had it then. But no, it's still not happy. I thought that was working then. But it's still not happy because it's still done the emergency unlace. Nope. No, we still have problems with the fast forward. For a moment, I thought we'd cracked it. Now, at least the picture search seems to be working reliably now. So the machine is sort of running, but we still have this lack of proper fast forward, and I think it's not going to get any better until I source a new part. Okay, let's put that to one side for a moment, because I wanted to mention the HS950, which is where that idler came from. So here's one I've taken apart already. I should mention that the front panel on this one comes off in a completely different way. You have to take the jog shuttle dial off first, and there's a lot more clips on this one. And I've taken the deck out. As you can see, this is particularly awkward because on this model you've got much worse access to the deck. On this one you can get to a few things by taking the bottom panel off, but on this model you really can't get very much at all. I'll just temporarily pop that back on there so we at least have it in place. Now there's a problem I've had. Let me get that idler in there. There we go. I seem to have lost one of those clips. I'll find that later. Now, there's a problem I've had on a previous occasion with a 950, and I want to show you it now. It was no picture, no hi-fi sound. I think there was no on-screen graphics either. And I believe, but I can't demonstrate it now, that there was an error message when I selected record. And the error message, if you looked it up, said missing a 5-volt record line, or missing a supply voltage for record. And actually it's missing a supply voltage for playback as well. And it was due to a transistor Q1015, which is there. And you can imagine how awkward it was getting to that because the deck sits on top of it. And that's a 2SD1996. Now I think it was a bit underrated for the job, so I fitted a 2SC2655, which is a higher power component, and I suspect that this machine has exactly that fault too, because there was a label on here about no playback picture. So shall we test that? Let's see if we can get to it. Maybe we can get to it from underneath and see what state that transistor's in. Oh, remember earlier I was saying on this machine you can get to the loading motor just by getting underneath the deck, and there's a few other Panasonic models I think that you could probably get to the loading motor, but this one I'm not so sure. Let's have a look. Loading motor is there, so when it's in position you can't get to it from underneath. What a disaster. It might be that this is a later model and they fixed that mistake, but yeah, that's really awkward, because if you can't get to the loading motor and you've got a tape stuck in there, you can't get the tape to eject so that you can get to the screws to get the deck out to fix the deck. That's really not good, is it? Right, let's have a look, see if we can get to this transistor underneath this one without having to take the whole PCB out. And it's quite possibly you can't, because it might be loads and loads of plastic in the way, but let's have a look. How do you get this metal panel off? That one's a bit fiddly because there's something in the way. Right. Look at that. That doesn't help you at all, does it? Because can't get to a thing. There's some instructions here. The phase of the K mechanism. Okay, it's telling you about phasing, but that doesn't really help you very much in gaining access. Oh, look, there's a small hole there, you can get to the contacts for the motor, for the loading motor. Now, of course, before applying a voltage to that, ideally you want to be able to isolate it from the circuit, but you can't. But maybe the circuit's designed so that you can apply a low voltage to that, and with the machine powered off, you can drive the motor and get it into an unlaced condition. But of course, if the motor coupling is slipping like crazy, you're still going to be struggling. You can probably do it though, with just continuously running it. You can probably free it up. All right, so slipping that panel off didn't help a great deal, although we did see something interesting. So to get this PCB out and replace that transistor means a lot of unplugging of a lot of stuff, doesn't it? And since this machine is scrap anyway, it's hardly worth it. But come on, let's see. Is that transistor Duff? That's Q1015, which is there. You can't get to the terminals at the top of the board, so you'd have to take the whole board out. That's a lot of work. I do remember being a bit dismayed at fixing one of these once when it was so hard to get to. I don't think there's any chance at all of getting to these terminals from here. Shall we do it? Even though it's a scrap machine and we're not going to fix this, shall we do it? Shall we see if that transistor is at fault here? Well, I hope you never have to get the main board out of one of these machines, because that was horrible. So this is the transistor we're looking for. According to my list that I wrote a couple of years ago. No, it's the 1015, that one there. And we'll just do a diode check on it. Well, I've got one diode, I'm not sure about the other. Let's take it out and check it. My desolder pump would be handy at this point, but unfortunately I'm still awaiting parts from China. Let's see if we can set you up here to see this. So I'm fairly sure that component was indeed defective. Now I know I've snapped one of the leads off, but I believe the lead that I've snapped off is base. I can still just about access it. It's a it's a normal NPN transistor, so if I apply the positive lead to the snapped off base, I don't know which is collector and emitter because I don't have a pin out to hand, but it's base to one of the pins is 0.693 and base to the other one is very high, 1.2 volts. So I'm fairly sure that that is a defective component, and that's the reason that there was no picture from this machine, because that transistor is obviously a common failure. So be aware of that one on the 950 model. Well, I think that's about it. I'm sorry that I didn't really manage to fix this AG4700 or NVHS 1000 to a high enough standard. It's not worth me carrying on to try to investigate the intermittent colour fault when the deck still really isn't working properly. So I need to try to find a replacement clutch assembly. Maybe if I can get that going, then I'll come back to fix the colour fault, which, though it's likely to be a capacitor, I may just actually just swap out the panels, because I've got the scrap machine, which I think probably works electrically, so I'll swap out the panels on that one. Now, the other machine, of course, was the HS 950, which was a scrapper anyway, but we did identify the transistor that had failed and was causing a lack of picture on that one. And you also saw a little bit about how to take that one apart, and it's not much fun. So I hope you've gained something from all this. I'm bound to get a few thumbs down because, you know, we didn't fix the thing properly, but I still think it was worth going through these. I must refer you, of course, to the service manuals. There's a lot more information in there, such as lots of the error messages, not just the consumer error messages that you will have seen one just now, F06, when the front loading wasn't working, but you can also get more information. If you go into the service manuals, you can call up various self-tests. So do go to the service manuals, they're easy enough to download. I will hopefully have more luck in my next video. Do please remember to like, share, and especially subscribe, and I'll do more content on audio and video technology in the near future. Bye for now.